What is going on, everyone? Happy Jerome Powell Day. Happy Jerome Powell Day. This is one of the most feared. Every time this guy opens his mouth, people are just looking at their wallets thinking, what the F has just happened to me? But guys, it is very important to understand the macroeconomic situation and why we continue to DCA dollar cost average into the market, regardless of what's going on, because the big boys will turn it around. However, the kinetic energy between Trump and China keeps getting worse, okay? You got Singapore talking of recession. You have China telling Trump to stop threatening and blackmailing us. Of course, this is very, very important. And there is ultimately, as we continue to see this new economic structure right before our eyes, we're witnessing historical events. But like I said in previous videos, I think there is method to the madness for Trump. So my take is this, guys. As we go into this Jerome Powell Day, what I'm seeing and noticing on chain in terms of, for example, Bitcoin accumulation, for example, Bitcoin holdings, all of these things are as they should be, okay? So, for example, look, exchange reserves for Bitcoin, you can see here in the last, it's negative. Exchanges reserves continue to fall, which indicates a lower selling pressure. And this is why, because we are playing that altcoin game, is why it's very, very important to look at some on-chain analytics, especially when it comes to Bitcoin, because ultimately Bitcoin dominance right now is on a rampant move. And if you look at the market in general, let's look at these price metrics. Really just nothing's overheating. And of course, on-chain metrics over here, you've got, nothing crazy happening. Of course, social metrics are all but out of the window. And of course, this is one of the reasons why our altcoin bags are suffering today. You can see Bitcoin dominance is continuing to surge to new highs. Okay, so the market as a whole, irrespective of what you're holding, especially if you're holding altcoins, the top 100 cryptocurrencies are all, you can see here, they're all on discounts. However, you start to see things on a 7-day ratio. So the Radium has had a 38% move over 7 days. Altcoin obviously had a 68%. That's the one that we've been 100, nearly 2x in the last 7 days. Okay. Of course, you got the likes of Mantra here crashing 85%, 87%, and could crash another 87% from here. But all in all, in terms of the top 100, there are a few things going under the radar, like SaltLayer. SaltLayer here is at, 39% for the week. And sometimes it's really good to zoom out because you start to see what, these are all within the last 7 days. If you see a massive interest like that, it means they are being bought, okay? 18% for Sonic. Of course, still well under 50 cents. I think that is a very, very good price. So just to give you, I'm looking at relative strength. Virtual's protocol, which is ranked at 170 right now, is, 23% for the week. What else stands out here? Artificial super intelligence, 18%. XCN has been having its own bull run. Of course, I do have a feeling about layer 2s, and I think layer 2s don't actually, unfortunately, layer 2s will not do anything until ETH moves. So holding a layer 2 is as risky as holding a meme coin right now. What is there to gain from having a layer 2, especially when you have the likes of Base? And then, of course, Algorand. I flagged Algorand today, saying that it is actually showing all of the signs of a bull run. Now, Algorand, this is FTX price levels, okay? So if you keep looking at the big cryptocurrencies here, Kaspa, obviously 29.7%. And then, yeah, you continue looking through that. But relative strength is very important. And you need to at the very least, you need to measure that on a weekly basis. Okay. You need to measure that on a weekly basis. So, take a look at these projects, because some of these you might be holding, some of these you might be getting into, some of these you might be wondering whether there's life in them at all. And if a project in a time like this is moving up 30% from its lows, even if we get a slightly more sell pressure in the market, it really shows that there's a lot of good interest here. And you can look, Aerodrome Finance, you've got Render here, you've got Kaspa, you've got AOS. There's a lot of projects that people can actually, or maybe are holding, the likes of Bitensa Tau. Yesterday in the community, I've already given up the actual, one of the most important subnet projects in the whole of the Bitensa ecosystem. And of course, Tau has a new airdrop for a DeFi project. Okay. So we're looking at this. And of course, then you've got to go through the risk over here. You're looking at the price of SUI right now. All right. Sitting between, $2.10. Okay. SUI is, again, a very, very important cryptocurrency that I talk about. But when you look at that within the top 100 or the biggest projects that you can see here, red picture, right? Because, guys, Ethereum is at $1,500. So even if you're buying micro caps now, which obviously I would allocate in the traditional money flow based on your circumstances, if you haven't got a lot of money, you've got to take risks. It doesn't mean you go and buy ETH with $500 and expect, you've got to go down the risk curve. But what I would say is, regardless of the macro picture, the cryptocurrency market has largely been resilient. It is giving us opportunities. Okay. It is definitely giving us opportunities. And then that brings me back to Mr. Trump. Okay. I kept on saying he wanted to crash the dollar, wanted to make the US the manufacturing hub. Okay. Whether they succeed that in a short space of time, these things take many, many years to come through. Of course, as we know in democracies, administrations change. But what we are seeing is, you've got a businessman at the end of the day. For years, politicians have been manipulating the market. And of course, Trump is no different. But the difference with Trump is the recent stock market crash has taken away from the rich and has given us an opportunity to write our financial freedom from here. For those who think the bull market is not coming back or the world is broken, and I did go through really, really important metrics in my last updates, like this global M2 money supply just blasting off like you've never seen before. Okay. So whilst I do believe people are overreacting to the current situation because they are smoking all of the macro data, I do believe ultimately Trump and his team and the people around him are all either business people and friggin' Wall Street people. I do not buy the idea that the economy is going to be such that we don't really get to see risk assets taken off. Nothing on chain, no metrics are telling me that. So it comes back to the point, is this guy going to be forced? Well, if you're crashing if you're sending this to the treasury and making it his problem, he's going to have to make a choice. Okay. He's going to have to make a choice. And of course, the economy has there's two sides of everything. Check this out.
Economic advisors discussing who may have helped craft the controversial formula for blanket tariffs. The formula's methodology cites a 2021 research paper focusing on tariffs and U.S. trade policy. But co-author of that paper, Brent Nyman, says the Trump administration got it all wrong. Brent Nyman joins me now. He is an economics professor at the University of Chicago and former counselor to Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. Brent, welcome. So first off, walk us through the formula and where the administration went wrong, because we can't know their thought process determining these rates. Does it seem to you like they cherry-picked through your research to validate their goals?
Well, first, thanks for having me, Alex. And let me step back just for 1 second before I get to the formula specifically, which is that the goal, as actually was just mentioned in one of the clips that you mentioned, the goal driving the formula and driving the policy was to eliminate bilateral trade imbalances, bilateral trade deficits. And the most important thing to realize is that is not the basis for a sound trade policy. There's nothing necessarily wrong at all with the fact that we import a lot of precious stones, let's say, from Zambia, and they don't happen to import a lot of high-tech equipment from us. Or even in the other direction, we happen to export more to Australia. They buy a lot of our trucks and farm equipment, and we don't buy that much of one of their main exports, which is beef. And there's nothing in those two patterns that suggests anything unfair is going on, or nothing in those patterns that suggests we're worse off. So the core problem initially was designing a policy to try to eliminate those imbalances. We should not try to do that. It'll make Americans much worse off. But then to get to your question, they use that logic to derive a formula. And I don't know entirely how they got the numbers that they plugged into the formula, but they cited work that I did with co-authors. And I believe that that work suggests that the number that they should have used would imply tariffs as low as 1/4 of the ones that they ultimately did calculate, and that President Trump ultimately did hold up on that sign on April 4th in the Rose Garden.
So do any of these formulas account for overall economic imbalances between countries?
So again, I think that the way that, you should do trade policy is pick a very specific, clear goal. Sorry, please.
No. I'm agreeing with you because I've read one thing you wrote. Trade imbalances between two countries can emerge for many reasons that have nothing to do with protectionism.
Right. I mean, these were billed as reciprocal tariffs. So,
Right.
Even earlier, I think it was the White House press spokesperson said something.
So fundamentally speaking, this is not politics, right or left. We don't care. But if you look at where we could head from here, where we could go from here, looking at everything that's broken, I mean, very clearly, whether you're on the left or on the right, that's just the political divide. But the rich have lost more. Okay, I can't remember the stat on top of my head. The stat was ridiculous. 10% of the wealthiest owners own 80% of the stock market. So what Trump has actually done, intentionally, if I add, is he's literally made that that playing field a lot more accessible to the likes of the ordinary person. And I do believe that as long as the world doesn't melt down further, and it'll be interesting going back to the Jerome Powell angle, as long as we see what he says today, there is a FOMC meeting coming on the 18th of next month, and that will be very, very interesting to see. But just imagine now you're an investor, and of course the markets don't wait for us anyway in the long term. But you look at these opportunities and you start to see Ethereum is sitting at $1,500, which obviously went as low as 1,400 and some change. And you're saying to yourself, November 2020 was a pivotal time where post-November, we made astronomical amount of money on the run-up to, of course, 2024, when the ETFs for Bitcoin were announced. So if I'm going by ETH and I'm saying to myself, the last time I was looking at ETH at these prices, I was actually getting ready for $900 ETH. And this is right about the time of the FTX disaster. So all I'm saying to you right now is accumulating and buying altcoins is the best thing, the only obligation you have to yourself and to your loved ones. I don't think, with what Trump is doing, the people around him, the ability to create a Ponzi, the ability for him to actually claim record numbers on the stock market after crashing it, whether the intention was trade deficit imbalances, whether the intention was to crash the dollar, whether the intention was to crash the bonds market, something has gone horribly wrong. And this situation is at a global level. So all I'm saying to you is if you genuinely believe in crypto, if you believe in a project, if you believe in an ecosystem, now's the time. Could prices actually come down a little bit more? Yes, no one's going to time the bottom. But all I'm saying is I'm looking at on-chain metrics and I want certain things to become more accessible to me over time so I can actually play either in the ecosystem or I can dabble around in the layer one. And again, I have been very lucky with the likes of SUI and Kaspa over the last 24 months to the point where I think my entries in both of them are quite generational. But looking at the TVL, I always like to look through these on-chain metrics and see what has changed over the last 7 days and what that percentage is. Okay. So, you've got, for example, you've got pseudo finance here, derivatives, you've got TVL of 915, 74% up in the last 7 days. And then, of course, you've got more of these DeFi projects. But it's always interesting to have a look at the changes in these and consider the TVL within the ecosystem. So the largest TVL on SUI is Navi Protocol. Sorry, SUI-LEN, Navi Protocol, and CETAs. But these are well under $500 million. Okay. Then, of course, you've got the likes of Scalab, $7 million market cap, $125 million. Then you got Bluefin, 77 million. And then the list goes on and on and on. Okay. You got Momentum there. You got Turbos Finance, 8 million in TVL. And that's it. This is how you farm the fastest layer one in existence with, of course, that team from Libra. This is something that I could buy generationally. However, the layer one is not even so much important now that we've got it locked in. The ecosystem is banging. You've got the likes of Lofi. You've got all of these projects that are well under the $100 million market cap, which means when eventually this competes with Solana, you're going to be thanking me in the comment section and letting me know what projects you are thinking about in the SUI ecosystem. Do you agree with the fact that Trump is going to send these markets to Valhalla and his cronies, the people that are with him? Because honestly, I've seen this happen before. These guys will brag about record levels of stock, and there could be even transition into crypto because TradFi is not in the it's not in the game. Anyway, guys, smash a like on your way out, and 99% of you who come to my channel don't really subscribe, so subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification so we can inform more people about these insightful, helpful videos. Take care, guys.